Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to give you the ultimate checklist to verify any supplier before you do business with them, so you don't waste your time, and even worse, your money. I've analyzed over 50,000 leads and opened 100 plus supplier accounts over the past 3 years. This checklist isn't theory, it's built from real experience and over $1.4 million in Amazon sales. If you want to avoid bad suppliers and only work with the good ones, pay close attention. This one checklist could save you thousands of dollars, and it's the same one that I use every day before working with any supplier. Let's dive right into it. All right, everyone. So here we have DDP Medical Supply, which is a medical wholesaler in Florida. Now, it's important to note that you can do this method for both OA through retailers or wholesale in the wholesale model through Amazon FBA. So as I mentioned, DDP Medical Supply is a wholesaler, and what you see right off the bat on their About page is their Google reviews. Now, Google reviews is important because you can't fake these, right? Many companies have tried, but Google has a really good algorithm and metric to take down fake reviews and really the correct ones. So you get a really good basis and broad knowledge of the quality of the company just based off of what their Google reviews will say, right? So let's jump on into it. Now, there's also going to be a second way to basically utilize Google that's going to come in a minute here that's just as important as Google reviews. So if you scroll through the reviews, obviously, you've probably used Google reviews before. You can sort through their newest, their highest rating, their lowest rating. But what's really the most important thing is what the quality of stars is out of 5. 4 and higher is typically the best. And then you also want to search by new, right? Because if anybody's having some new experiences with the supplier that are negative or very, very bad, well, we have to put a lot of weight into those. Now, for the bigger retailers like the Walgreens and the Walmarts of the world, you don't have to worry as much because you know exactly what you're getting with them. And so many people have had experiences that there's not really a concern or a worry there. But for smaller retailers, and those are where the quality leads are found, this is where it becomes really important because with both retailers and wholesalers, we have to trust by giving our money to them, to buy the inventory and hope that it will arrive at our prep center or at Amazon or at a warehouse, right? So we're putting a lot of trust in that little lead time, that 5 or 7 day gap that the products are supposed to be shipping to us as the client, because the worst thing we want to do is buy inventory and then never receive the inventory because we're working with bad suppliers, or the inventory becomes damaged and we can't get a refund. So these steps are very, very necessary. You can check the newest reviews because there might be, maybe 3.5 rating out of 5. But if you go all the way down to the bottom, it might be from 8 or 10 years ago from one unhappy customer. And we don't want to base the entire, situation of the company based off one customer. What you can also look at here is, the quantity of their reviews. You'll see if it's a bigger supplier or a smaller supplier, which obviously the smaller retailers and suppliers are typically better because maybe they have more competitive pricing or they tailor to their client a bit more. But, you don't put too much weight. Also, if the supplier has, 100 views or 200 views, because they can be totally fine, right? Just like this one, which has 54 reviews and I'm sure a really quality supplier, right? Now, what you want to do is next, and it's almost just as important as the Google reviews, is take the address of the supplier, whether they're a retailer or an actual wholesaler, right? Who typically are supposed to have warehouses or some sort of brick and mortar building where you can actually shop or where they store the products to buy from them. So what you do is you just copy the address, right? And you take it here, copy and paste, and we're going to open Google Maps here. And the supplier is in Florida, right? So I can't visit the supplier or see what they're doing. Especially if we're trying to do this all remote, we can't actually see what the supplier, what they are in person, or who works there, and shake people's hands. So this is your best way of doing it. You want to type in the supplier's address in Google Maps and make sure you have the correct address, right? Which looks like to be this one. Now, what's going to pop up is typically a picture of the building. And if there isn't a picture, you can actually dive in to actually see, the Google Maps street view, where then you see what the building looks like on the outside. Because if they're a smaller supplier and if they're looking to scam you as a buyer or not supply the authentic products, then they're probably not going to have, a really big warehouse, because if they would just do things, fairly and correctly, right? So here with DDP, you can see that they have their company logo right on the outside of a building. It gives me a lot of trust that this is actually a company that, if things went really, really south, that we could go in person to or talk to. And I'm sure they're much, much bigger than just somebody in their house or garage, because, that's the worst thing you have to worry about is, are these people really authentic, or are they really big enough to not only just supply me with authentics and proper products when we place orders, but handle things with customer service when problems go wrong, or just have somebody to talk to. So as you can see here, with the building coming up, it does look like a quality supplier and somebody that we trust. So using those two in tandem with Google reviews and also analyzing the size of the building or just the building in general, because not all wholesalers are going to have their logo on the building, which is completely fine. But as long as they actually have a building that looks like a wholesale or distribution facility where they can hold products then we're thumbs up. It's important to note that for retailers, obviously retailers don't have large warehouses, or maybe they don't even have like 4,000 square foot stores because it's very big. Some retailers are smaller. At least you want to see some sort of logo because they are a retailer and people are coming in person to shop for them. So you want to see some sort of logo on the outside and some sort of tell that it's a shopping district, or people are actually buying supplies or products from there as consumers. Confidence rather than just using the Google reviews. But using them in tandem is really good, effective method, and that's the number one way to really research and to checklist a supplier. But let's dive into number 2 here. All right, diving into method number 2 here, we work with Trustpilot, right? And I'm sure you use Trustpilot as a consumer and a customer for other brands or just buying products in general, whether it's on Amazon or other retailers. But using it as a purchaser for an Amazon business is critical, because it's also just another step that we can have some sort of relief that the supplier is authentic, whether they're a retailer or a wholesaler, right? It applies for both. So we're going to dive here into this company, which is called Medcure LLC, and they are actually a wholesaler, not a retailer. But you're going to see really off the bat that you get a really good representation of the company, whether they're quality, by seeing their reviews. And similar to Google reviews, you can just search by recency in reviews, right? So you can see by new, by old, by quality and stars. And also what's more important is, just like Google reviews, each different customer has a long list of their review, right? So you can actually see in detail what the reason for the concern was, right? Because if the biggest concern from a supplier or a retailer is it was longer shipping times, or some minor concern where I had to wait 4 or 5 days for communication from customer service, that's not as big of a concern as if they responded with, hey, I never received my products and I'm scammed, right? Because if you see those tells, then you immediately do not want to work with the supplier. Or if you see like, hey, I received an inauthentic product, a beauty care product, and now, I've been damaged by it in some way through my Amazon business or through my e-commerce business. Right? So if you see those tells, you definitely want to avoid the supplier. But if you see something with people just being picky customers, you don't want to put as much weight into it. Now, it's also on a quantity spectrum. Like if the supplier has 50 total reviews and 40 of them are well and 10 are just nitpicky, then it's okay. But if like 25 of them are nitpicky and then 25 are, well, then you have to raise some concerns to say, well, is it worth it to do all this hassle to these other, buyers or customers? Because at the end of the day, guys, this isn't just Amazon sellers or Walmart sellers or e-commerce resellers, because these are real people, real customers buying from these suppliers, right? Whether they're a retailer or whether they are working, as wholesalers with these guys. But these are real reviews that you base in from what a customer's perspective is, right? So obviously, as a consumer, for us who are reselling these products, they're going to tailor it to us in a better effect and a better reason, because we're buying maybe in bulk or just in general. And if you're not buying in bulk, you're still having some sort of relationship with the supplier. But it's critical to really analyze these in depth, because these are people who had these experiences before us. So as you see here on the top right of Trustpilot, they give the all-time quality of the review, which is out of 5, and it's 2.8 stars, which is very not quality. You really want to stick over something 3.8 or 3.9 and really get into the 4 range. And then also on top of that, there has to be a minimal amount of bad reviews. For example, this supplier has 42 reviews, and if you go into their 1-star reviews, it takes over more than half of actually the total reviews that they have, right? So, first review here is in 2025 of June, which is almost 2 weeks ago. And it says, beware, I try to work with them as a wholesale buyer, right? You can get all of these reviews and analytics right kind of in front of you. As I scroll down it, you can kind of read it on your own time and as we go. But, these are very scary and not things we want to hear when we're looking to buy and invest thousands of dollars of inventory into these suppliers, right? So like makes it very hard for you to buy, as you scam, will not return your calls. These are every negative sign that you could have. And remember what I talked about in the Google reviews. If the most recent reviews are very negative rather than the older ones being negative, that's a very, very bad sign, because if they had 2 or 3 bad reviews back in 2015 or 2016, then it's okay, because that was 8 or 9 years ago and there might be different management where they might have cleaned up their act. But these are recent. So this is what they're under their current management team, current process. They're having very bad reviews. Now, I know good reviews are getting mixed in here, but this is important, because you don't want to just take the good reviews to battle and say, okay, this is great. Maybe those are just bad customers. If you're seeing stuff like scam or beware or don't return my calls, if you're seeing that 3 out of 4 reviews, then the good reviews do not matter. Just move on to the next supplier, or else you're going to waste your time and money. So now that's method number 2 now. So now we have utilizing Google and Trustpilot. So let's dive into the third one. All right, guys. So we're actually diving into number 3 here. And number 3 has a 2-part series to it, a 1 and a B, but it's good because more the merrier in double checking if the supplier is quality or not. We're back here on DDP Medical Supply. And what we're actually going to do is go onto their website. So the part 1 of this third method is looking at the contact form or some sort of contact way for this company, right? This company, ideally, or any company that you work with who's supplying you products at bulk, should have a .com email, right? So you don't want them to have a Gmail because that shows that there may be a two-person company or a very small company. You want them to be professional and have an actual .com email. I think it only costs like $6 a month to actually have a .com or a domain. So as a proper company, they should ideally have a .com email, right? So as you can see here, customer service at DDP Medical Supply, medical.com, they have a proper .com email. So that gives us a good incentive to actually trust them. Now, what we can also do is you can actually just call them, right? And hope to speak to an actual customer service representative or an actual person at the company. Because if they have a phone number that they don't answer, and their email is Gmail, well, it's a really bad sign. And depending how the other two methods worked out, that's really a bad sign to start working with this retailer and supplier. Because if something goes wrong, or if you have a question, you're not able to contact anybody, which is scary, right? First, you check the email and see that it's .com. You can either send them an email and wait for a response, or just get an immediate response by actually calling the company. So once you call the company and you learn to see who they are and you feel them out, then you have a bit more confidence on top of having the other two methods. So just doing a contact form is really effective. Now, what you also want to do is, we're going to dive back here into the regular Google search. Just type the actual company into Google and go through all of their websites and links that are popping up. Because remember, Google does a very deep analytical search on every company, and they're going to populate all the top things about each company. As you go down here, the review sites that are smaller, that have reviews from customers, or you might just see partnerships or people they work with, or LinkedIn profiles or people at the company. All those stuff are really good tells, especially people at the company, because not only can you contact them to be your representative, but you can also just see that it's a real person working at the company rather than somebody from out of the country who actually the company really doesn't exist and it's a small company or somebody in somebody's warehouse or basement, right? So those tells are very quality. And as we go through here, you can see they have a LinkedIn page, they have an Indeed page, which is very incentivizing and makes us very confident in the supplier, because you can actually go and apply for a job with the supplier. So if you had to contact them some way or some form, you have Indeed as the last resort method, right? So there's many different other websites and opportunities to click on this company here. There's crunchbase.com. They have a Facebook page. They have a pitch book, this is just showing that the supplier is very reputable and on a bigger scale. Now, this supplier is bigger, right? So there's going to have a lot more different methods and ways to basically show their representation. But many of the suppliers that you guys will be working with and that I work with are smaller. So you're not going to get all three checks through Google, through searching for the supplier and contacting them and going through Trustpilot. Some suppliers aren't even on Trustpilot. But it's important to actually start getting some of these, thumbs up from some of these methods to actually know that these suppliers are quality and they will be effective and ensure that our products will arrive on time, arrive safely, and are authentic. So, like I said, all these suppliers aren't going to be as big, aren't going to have Trustpilots, aren't going to have proper LinkedIns, proper Google reviews, but you have to get some of these tells from some of these methods to make sure that they are an authentic supplier, because worst case scenario, don't buy the product and just move on to the next product, because risking $1,000 or $2,000 in inventory is deafening to your Amazon business or e-commerce business, rather than just passing on and moving on to a next lead. So there you go. There's step number 3. All right, guys, if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, as it helps me continue to grow to make more and more Amazon content every day. And I'll be having Amazon content coming out on YouTube every 4 days. Subscribe and follow the journey so I can continue to help you guys make your first $1,000 with Amazon. See you for the next video.